Tonight at 10, His Majesty meets notables, tribal elders and leading figures from the Mafraq Governorate at the Royal Hashemite Court. The Prime Minister says Jordan has secured $2.1 billion in grants and other privileges at the recently held London Donors Conference. And Syrian rebel groups urge the United States to do more to stop Russian bombing raids in the war-torn country ahead of a new round of peace talks this week. Good evening and welcome to the 10 o'clock news. His Majesty the King met notables, tribal elders and leading figures from Mafraq Governorate at the Royal Hashemite Court. The meeting is the latest in the King's efforts to communicate with all citizens across the country. He told the local leaders from the northeastern region that Jordan's northern border is solid and safe and that he is confident our security forces are able to protect it. Commenting on the outcome of the recently held London Donor Conference on Syria, King Abdullah called it very positive and the beginning that should be built on. He said the gathering had opened the door for the flow of aid to Jordan and to develop its economy, attract investments and upgrade trade between the kingdom and Europe. The king said he would ask the government to look into what is needed in the coming months after London. There has to be one positive, the king urged, and each one should bear the responsibility and work hand in hand, government, parliamentarians and officials, to reap the benefit from the London gathering and move to bolster the national economy. His Majesty pointed to the challenges facing the Mafraq Governorate and the pressure on its people due to the influx of Syrian refugees into the region. Mafraq, he stressed, should benefit from the aid pledged to Jordan at the London meeting. Therefore, he said the need arises for ideas on productive projects in the area that are suitable to the nature of the governorate and that meet the needs of its population through an establishment link between the region, donors and the government. Royal Court Chief Faiz Tarawni told the audience that the King had directed the Royal Court officials to carry out a number of initiatives in Mafraq, including building 26 homes for underprivileged families. In addition, 4 public parks will be established among other facilities. Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour said His Majesty the King succeeded in turning the focus on countries hosting Syrian refugees at last week's Donors Conference in London. He told chief editors and columnists of daily newspapers and directors of official media outlets that the King had used his credibility to convince the world and the conference's sponsors on the need to adopt the holistic approach to support refugee host countries. These host nations, he said, has absorbed a shock that was not less than the plight of the refugees itself. He said the key London gathering had approved an annual grant of $700 million for Jordan, spread over 3 years, or a total of $2.1 billion. Another key achievement for Jordan at the meeting, he said, was its decision to plug the financing gap between revenues and borrowing and aid. The gap, he pointed out, was $1.9 billion annually, adding that Jordan can now raise the ceiling of borrowing at the rate of $1.9 billion per annual for 3 years, a total of $5.7 billion at a very low interest rate and a grace period of 25 years. Mansour also said Jordan has secured an easing of the rules of origin with Europe that would allow a more free access of Jordanian exports to the European market. That decision, he said, would increase national export to Europe, which currently do not exceed $250 million. The Prime Minister said Jordan had asked for $1 billion for building schools to ease the pressure on public schools caused by Syrian refugees' children. He said the aid will be spread on all regions of the kingdom, not just communities of high Syrian presence.
Financing building schools at $1 billion in 3 years, 2016, 2017 and 2018 in order to absorb the Syrian refugee problem. The locations had not been defined, either in the north or south, so it was left to Jordan to choose the location. Regarding Syrian labor, we will not tolerate any arrangements under which a Syrian laborer would compete with his Jordanian peer. This is unacceptable. All United Nations organizations are working to ensure there is no competition between the host and the guest concerning job opportunities.
Her Majesty Queen Rania said the good citizenship, loyalty and kindness of Jordanians are among the most important factors in bringing about positive change in their communities. The remarks came while attending the launch of the 6th Jordan Volunteers Forum at the Royal Cultural Center. The forum highlighted the accomplishments of Jordan volunteers over the past year, as well as the group's online and offline initiatives, which are reaching a wider network of volunteers and beneficiaries. Her Majesty said she was proud of the young volunteers and delighted with their initiatives that have institutionalized the concept of volunteerism in the country. The Queen listened to a brief about the forum, which included overviews of the members' initiatives, their goals, and how they would like to see the future of volunteerism evolve. Members of the group gifted Her Majesty a copy of a book titled Jordan Volunteers Experience. The book, written by the group's members, is about volunteer work in Jordan. Syrian rebel groups urged U.S. President Barack Obama to do more to stop Russian bombing raids in the war-torn country. Washington is under pressure ahead of a new round of Syrian peace talks this week. World powers are meeting in Germany tomorrow to try to negotiate an end to the war after it faltered in the starting blocks last week. Here's more.
Syrian rebels fighting the government of Russian-backed President Bashar al-Assad now say they will attend peace talks later this month. But they called on U.S. President Barack Obama to show more strength with Russia to stop an aerial bombardment of their positions in Syria. Opposition figures insist that sieges on cities across Syria must be lifted and airstrikes on civilian areas must stop if the opposition is to resume talks in Geneva as planned on February 25.
Yes, we will go. And we were there to really make it a success. But we don't have a serious partner. It's, you know, when you are going for a political solution, I believe that you should, show something on ground. If they stop killing of Syrians, then I believe the solution is there.
So you will go to peace talks later this
We
year?
will go to peace
without
talks.
any other preconditions?
We don't have any preconditioning. We only ask for implementation of a Security Council resolution. And I believe this is the duty and responsibility of those countries who signed this resolution.
Riyad Hijab, chief coordinator of the Opposition High Negotiations Committee, told reporters in London before we go on February 25, those measures should be implemented in reality on the ground. As well as the lifting of sieges on cities and towns, Hijab listed letting aid through and stopping airstrikes on civilian areas as conditions for attending the talks.
ونتحدث عن رفع الحصار عن المدن المحاصرة.
I spoke about lifting up the seizure of those circled cities and towns
وإطلاق سراح المعتقلين.
and releasing those who are detained.
Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan, meanwhile, criticized Washington for its support of Syrian Kurdish rebels. He said Washington's inability to grasp their nature had turned the region into what he called a sea of blood. Erdogan said Turkey should respond by implementing its own solution, referring to the creation of a safe zone in northern Syria. In Moscow, Russia's foreign ministry rejected U.S. allegations that Russian bombing had caused a humanitarian crisis in Syria. A foreign ministry spokeswoman accused the West of fueling the problem. She told the news briefing that Moscow views U.S. allegations that it uses unguided munitions in Syria as totally unfounded. Hiba Al-Atoum for the news at 10.
Meantime, the U.S. envoy to the coalition against Daesh terrorist group, Brett McGurk, said Russian airstrikes north of the Syrian city of Aleppo were forcing the U.S.-backed Syrian opposition to fight against the Syrian government, but not the terrorist group. In a testimony to the House Foreign Affairs Committee, McGurk said the United States and its allies are making progress against the group, but facing major challenges.
We're working with local opposition forces to move east to fight ISIL. And that was a very sophisticated endeavor, but as the Russian airstrike campaign has begun, particularly north of Aleppo, those fighters are now peeled off that line to go fight the regime advance. And this is causing us real problems for the counter-ISIL campaign. And frankly, we tell the Russians this very clearly. You say you're fighting ISIL, but what you're doing is actually having a detrimental effect to the fight against ISIL. And this remains a very serious concern.
58 Syrians displaced by the war in their country crossed to Jordan through different border points over the last 24 hours. A source at the Jordan Armed Forces Arab Army said border guard troops escorted the new arrivals and provided them with the necessary aid before transferring them to the refugee camps. It said medics of the Royal Medical Services treated sick people among the refugees at medical centers posted on the frontiers. Dozens of Syrians seeking refuge in Jordan make it to the kingdom daily as the exodus from the war-torn country persists. Iraq said its military completely recaptured the city of Ramadi, reopening a road to Baghdad after weeks of mop-up operations against Daesh militants. Daesh suicide bombers reportedly killed at least 28 security personnel in both Ramadi and neighboring Fallujah. The same day, Iraqi troops cleared Daesh fighters from the Sijaria district just east of Ramadi. Iraqi officials said security forces captured the eastern districts of Khalidiyya and Husayba and had managed to open the Ramadi-Baghdad road that passes through Khalidiyya. Security forces were dismantling networks of improvised explosive devices left behind the Daesh militants. A special operations commander said his troops evacuated Husayba, removing at least 1,500 civilian residents. Israeli occupation forces shot and killed a 15-year-old boy Palestinian north of Hebron in the occupied West Bank. The Palestinian Health Ministry said Omar Madi was fatally shot multiple times in the abdomen and neck during clashes that broke out inside Al-Urub refugee camp near Hebron. Meantime, Israeli occupation forces arrested 15 Palestinians during raids in West Bank towns. The Palestinian Prisoner Club said in a statement that troops raided Hebron, Bethlehem, Jenin and the Qalandiya refugee camp north of Jerusalem. 6 people, including 4 members of one family, were killed in clashes in Yemen's strategic port city of Aden. Government forces and the allied resistance fighters stormed some neighborhoods in Al-Mansoura district. A government official said government forces were looking for wanted figures and sought to clear armed groups linked to Al-Qaeda and Daesh from Al-Mansoura district. Government military forces who are loyal to Yemeni President Abd Rabba Mansour Hadi also stormed a large military camp in the northern province of Jawf, forcing Houthi fighters into sheltering in the nearby uplands. After fierce fighting and intensive air bombardments by Saudi-led coalition, government forces broke into Al-Khanjar camp in Khab and Al-Shaghaf district, scoring another victory against the Iranian-backed Houthi militias. New Jersey Governor Chris Christie is ending his campaign for the Republican presidential nomination. His departure would leave 8 Republicans vying to represent the party in the November presidential election. The 2-term governor placed 6th in yesterday's primary in New York, Hampshire. New York billionaire Donald Trump swept the Republican contest in the same state along with the Democratic presidential candidate Bernie Sanders. Here's more.
Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump greeting his supporters after his decisive win in the New Hampshire primary.
You know, I said it, and I said it even a year ago. I said, I think I'm going to do really well there because I'm here a lot, and it's so beautiful, and I love it so much, and I love the people, and I said I actually think they like me a lot.
The win for Trump reestablishes his frontrunner status in the crowded GOP race for the party's presidential nomination, following his loss to Ted Cruz in the Iowa caucuses earlier this month. On the Democratic side, Bernie Sanders, who barely lost to Hillary Clinton in Iowa, posted a resounding victory over her in New Hampshire.
Thank you, New Hampshire.
He told supporters to prepare for a long fight.
We will need to come together in a few months and unite this party and this station, because the right-wing Republicans we oppose must not be allowed to gain the presidency.
The victories by Trump and Sanders show voters who are disenchanted with the economy and Washington politicians responding enthusiastically to candidates they view as outsiders.
I wouldn't even go so far to say that Sanders is like a revolutionary, you know, like he calls himself. But I think it's just he has stopped being like perpetuating this cycle of politics where whoever has the most money wins.
I'm all for Trump. I think he'll make the greatest president ever. I love what his policies are for veterans, for jobs. There's nothing that he doesn't touch, and he's going to make America great again. America great again.
The focus of the race now turns from chilly New Hampshire to warmer campaign grounds. The next primary contests are in Nevada and South Carolina later this month.
The first day of one of the UK's oldest sporting traditions drew huge crowds with hundreds of participants and, as usual, plenty of confusing players. The annual Royal Shrovetide football game is said to be the world's oldest, largest, longest and angriest footballing occasion. The pitch is on no man's land between two watermills, which serve as the goals at either end of the town, about 5 kilometers apart. Shrovetide football has been played for centuries and possibly for over 1,000 years. The game has little to do with the beautiful game as we know it. Gales Monfils of France eased past Latvian Ernest Gulbis 6-4, 6-4 in a first-round match at the World Indoor Tournament in Netherlands. Monfils, seeded 5, took the first set against the qualifier with a single break of serve in the 7th game, achieved with a superb drop shot. Monfils will play Borna Čorić of Croatia in the second round. And finally, the weather outlook: cold and partly cloudy in many regions tonight, with 4 degrees in Amman and a chance for light rain, and winds will be northwesterly moderate. Tomorrow it will continue to be cold and pleasant in the Dead Sea and the Jordan Valley, with a slight chance for a drizzle in the northern and western regions. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect a third day tomorrow with northerly moderate winds and calm seas. The weatherman warns against fog in the hilly areas and on the airport road. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. And to close here, our top stories once again. His Majesty meets notables, tribal elders and leading figures from the Mafraq Governorate at the Royal Hashemite Court. The Prime Minister says Jordan has secured $2.1 billion in grants and other privileges at the recently held London Donors Conference. And Syrian rebel groups urge the United States to do more to stop Russian bombing raids in the war-torn country ahead of a new round of peace talks this week. And with that, we end tonight's news. I'm Lawal Balkar. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.